Welcome back, focused learners. Today we're diving into a really fascinating explainer all about the hidden psychology of extreme people-pleasing, the architecture of altruism, and the power of no. If you're the kind of person who constantly finds yourself putting the happiness, the needs, and the comfort of everyone else entirely before your own, well, you've landed in exactly the right place. We're going to unpack the hidden architecture of this behavior, piece by intricate piece, drawing on some really profound psychological insights from our source material. So get comfortable, focus in, and let's start uncovering the surprising mechanics behind your everyday interactions. So, why is it so hard for you to say no? I mean, it's just a tiny two-letter word, right? A single syllable. Yet for so many of us, letting it roll off our tongues feels like trying to move a literal mountain. We end up bending over backward, we overcommit to things we don't actually want to do, and we completely drain our own energy reserves in the process. I want to validate that struggle for you right out of the gate, because this is a genuine everyday hurdle. You might find yourself saying yes to a massive weekend favor you absolutely do not have the time for, just to avoid that fleeting moment of awkward silence. But what if I told you that this constant yielding, this endless accommodation of everyone else's requests, isn't actually what it appears to be on the surface?
Here's the crucial point. It's not just altruism, it's fear. Take a second to let that really sink in. Society constantly tells us that being endlessly accommodating makes us incredibly kind, selfless, and noble. And yes, obviously, kindness is a wonderful, necessary human trait. But what our source material reveals is a profound, really paradigm-shifting psychological truth. When this behavior becomes an unbreakable habit, when you physically feel a block preventing you from saying no, it actually stops being about true altruism. It becomes a psychological response rooted deeply in fear. You aren't just helping someone, you're instinctively protecting yourself from a perceived threat. And what exactly are we afraid of? Usually, it's the fear of rejection, the fear of abandonment, or just the sheer terror of interpersonal conflict. Evolutionarily speaking, our brains are wired to stay safely within the tribe, so pushing back or disappointing someone can trigger this internal alarm bell that screams, if I say no, I'm going to be cast out. Recognizing this hidden fear is really the first step to dismantling it. Here's our roadmap for this explainer. First, the fear of saying no. Second, childhood and the fawn response. Third, beware the masked narcissist. And fourth, how to confidently say no.
Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1, the fear of saying no. Check out this really profound insight directly from our source material. People who think about others more than their own happiness. Does that ring a bell? Now, it's completely natural to want to make your loved ones happy, but notice the crucial phrasing here. Thinking about others more than your own happiness. When the scales tip that far, it's a glaring sign that your psychological boundaries have completely collapsed. You're essentially outsourcing your own well-being just to ensure the comfort of the room. It's like handing over the remote control of your emotional state to whoever happens to be standing next to you. Think about trying to keep the peace that attends family dinner by totally sacrificing your own enjoyment, absorbing everyone else's stress so they don't have to deal with it. That underlying fear of disrupting the peace or being perceived as difficult is exactly what keeps you trapped in a cycle of endless yeses, and it slowly erodes your own sense of self.
Moving right along, Section 2, childhood and the fawn response. Now, what's really interesting about this is that we've all heard of the classic fight, flight, or freeze reactions when it comes to trauma and extreme stress. But there's a hidden fourth response that explains so much of this behavior, the fawn response. Basically, it's a trauma response originating in childhood where a person completely avoids conflict by constantly appeasing others. How does a kid actually develop this? Well, kids are like sponges. If you grew up in an environment where a parent or caregiver was emotionally volatile, unpredictable, or even just emotionally unavailable, you quickly became a highly sensitive weather forecaster. If perfect, unquestioning compliance was the absolute only way to avoid a lightning strike, to stop from being yelled at or punished, your developing brain hardwired itself to people-please as a literal survival mechanism. You learned that your safety depends entirely on managing other people's moods. The fascinating and honestly difficult part is that you carry that inner child into adulthood. Now you treat a minor disagreement with a coworker or a partner like a life-or-death emotional threat, and you instantly revert to fawning just to survive.
So, there is a massive defining difference between healthy altruism and the fawn response. Healthy altruism is giving from a full cup. You enthusiastically help others, but you absolutely possess the ability to politely decline a request without feeling this intense, crushing wave of guilt. You offer your time because you want to, not because you feel you have to. Fawning, however, is giving from a place of deep depletion and fear. You appease someone solely to avoid their potential anger. You say yes while simultaneously feeling a heavy knot of internal resentment, and your own needs simply vanish into the background. Actually, that feeling of resentment is your best metric. Resentment is the canary in the coal mine. It's your mind's way of telling you that you just said yes when you desperately needed to say no. Recognizing which dynamic you're operating from in any given moment is an incredibly empowering step forward in your personal growth.
All right, things are about to get a bit serious. Section 3, Beware the Masked Narcissist.
Unfortunately, a fawn response doesn't just exist in a vacuum. It actually acts like a beacon for a very specific type of person. Our source material highlights 3 stark, undeniable facts here. First, there are masked, dangerous people out there who specifically seek out overly compliant individuals. They'll test your boundaries early on with something small, a delayed text or an inappropriate minor favor. If you yield and appease them, boom, they know they've found a viable target. Second, and this is absolutely crucial to anticipate, they tend to approach or escalate their behavior right when you start to get better. The moment you attempt to set a boundary, like saying, hey, I can't answer work emails after 6 p.m., they experience what psychologists call an extinction burst. They do not like it when you stop appeasing them, so they might suddenly guilt trip you or flip the script to play the victim, desperate to regain that old dynamic. And third, they are driven by deep narcissism. They rely entirely on your fear of saying no to feed their own endless need for control. Understanding this predatory dynamic is literally your armor. It tells you that someone's fierce resistance to your boundaries isn't proof that you're being mean. It's proof that a masked narcissist was completely relying on your compliance.
Now for the best part, Section 4, How to Confidently Say No. Now that we've uncovered the hidden fears, recognized the childhood roots, and unmasked the narcissists, it's time to take all of your power back. Here's your actionable blueprint to rewire this behavior. Step 1. Keep a straight back. This explores the brilliant concept of embodied cognition. Basically, your physiology dictates your psychology. Before you even open your mouth to decline a request, align your posture. Standing tall actually lowers cortisol, the stress hormone, and increases confidence-boosting chemicals in your brain. A straight back signals to your own nervous system and to the person you're talking to that you are grounded and safe. Step 2. Say no. Remember, no is a complete sentence. Don't wrap your refusal in 10 desperate apologies or long-winded fabricated excuses. Just state the word or the boundary clearly. Step 3. Do it without hurting others. You absolutely do not have to be aggressive to be assertive. You can decline a request warmly and firmly. If you need a concrete phrase to steal and use today, try this. I would absolutely love to help you out, but I just don't have the bandwidth right now. The goal is simply to break the automatic fawn response, not to start a fight. You're maintaining your own emotional borders while still preserving your inherent kindness. Which brings us to the most important, provocative question of this entire explainer. What will be your first no today? It doesn't have to be massive or earth-shattering. It could be saying no to an extra, unpaid project at work. It could be saying no to a draining phone call from a toxic relative. Or, it could simply be saying no to the internal guilt you feel for taking 5 minutes just for yourself to breathe. You now understand the deep architecture of your altruism. You know how to recognize the hidden fear. You understand its childhood origins, and you have the physical and psychological tools to finally set your boundaries against those who would try to exploit them. So take that power, keep your back straight, and go reclaim your peace and your happiness. Thank you so much for joining me today, and as always, keep learning.